Hello and welcome to Crimepedia podcast. This week I am your host. My name is Cherry, like the fruit, and with me is my co-host, is Morgan.
Cherry like the fruit. What else could it be?
Because somebody called me Sherry this week.
Oh.
So I was like, oh, as in like CH. So I wonder if they were being like posh. My name is Sherry, but no, it's
Sherry.
Good old bog standard Cherry. Just common old garden old cherry, just like the tree.
Oh, it's funny.
Yes,
funny.
And so yes, it is welcome to a snowy England and a not so snowy America.
Not snowy right now.
Technology is amazing. Both on the same podcast. You're over there, I'm over here.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, I know. And how long have we been doing our podcast for? 2 whole years.
Over 2 years, yeah.
Go us. You think
Just
we would have run out of
imagine.
things to talk about it by now. But no, here we are, still going.
Just imagine that this technology existed back in, 1776. We might still be a part of the same country if they could just talk to each other.
Yeah, exactly.
Face to face.
Keep things nice and simple.
Yep.
Well, we have got our Christmas special coming up. We've got a very exciting case to bring to you just before Christmas. And then we'll give you a little breakdown of when we're on a break. I think you're pretty good. I think you got us pretty much mostly over Christmas. So we will be here still in your ears. You don't get much of a break from us this year. And this week's case is a case that was inspired by a case that has just been solved. So during a news conference on Thursday morning of last week, authorities have announced that the child who was known over the last, 40 odd years as the boy in the box was actually 4-year-old Joseph Augustus Zarelli. So his body was found in February 1957. It was wrapped in a blanket and placed inside a cardboard box and left in a part of northeastern Philadelphia. And thanks to genealogy, that boy has now been identified. From 1957, this case was. And we finally, in 2022, have the answer and have who that little boy is. So he
Absolutely
can now
amazing.
his remains can now be named and hopefully he will be at rest. So that is another reason why I always like to look at really old cases, because I still think that there's so many that we can solve even now, all this time later.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
So crazy that they finally solved that.
I know.
So what do we have this week?
So this week is a case from 1967. It's an English case, and this week's case is the murder of Bernard Oliver. Bernard Oliver was a handsome young man living in the bustling Muswell Hill area of London. He was employed and worked hard, and he was one of 6 children. When a regular night out with friends ends with no one hearing from Bernard, his father is worried, and rightly so. Because less than 10 days later, the body of a young man is found, and what evolves causes decades of heartbreak for the Oliver family. This is Crimepedia, and this is the murder of Bernard Oliver. Bernard Oliver was born in 1950, so he was 17 years old and was a warehouse worker from Muswell Hill in London. He was the 4th of 6 children to be born to his parents George and Sheila. So the family lived in Steeds Road in Muswell Hill until George and Sheila separated. Sheila actually left the family home. And this is less than a year before Bernard disappeared. Now, Bernard was described as having special educational needs. He had an inability to properly read or write. And I've read a few different things. One of them said that he had the mental capacity of an 11-year-old. And so he was quite easy to not manipulate, but kind of, that kind of thing, quite easy to coerce, should I say. Bernard found his parents' separation quite upsetting. And he was already quite introverted. But when they separated, he retreated even further into his shell. He had really thick, dark hair, beautiful long eyelashes. And he kind of reminds me of George Michael. When George Michael looked Greek?
Oh.
And like in Last Christmas, the video.
Like
he
around
looks a bit like
the
Andrew,
Wham time.
Yeah, Wham, like that Wham era. He reminds me of George Michael when he looked really Greek
Yeah.
before he had all of the blonde tips and all that kind of stuff. He's a
Right.
really handsome, really good-looking boy. On Friday the 6th of January in 1967, he went out for a drink in the evening with his friends. Nothing of note happened that evening. Friends report everything was fine. And the next morning, he didn't return, which is not unusual. He's a 17-year-old lad. He was out with his friends. His father said it
Mhm.
wasn't that unusual that he didn't come home. But as time went on, his father became worried and the alarm was raised. There were sightings of Bernard after his disappearance in and around Muswell Hill by people that didn't actually know he was missing. So before word got
Okay.
out that he was missing, people had said that they had seen him, didn't realize that he was missing, but had actually seen him at that time. So that was quite a good thing. And perhaps he had gone off and just had enough and decided to go off on his own. Now, on the 16th of January, 9 days after Bernard disappeared, a farm worker called Fred Birdie was working in a field near Bentley Lane, near the village of Tattingstone in Suffolk. Now, this is about an hour and 45 minutes away from Muswell Hill. So a fair
Okay.
way away.
Yeah.
And Fred discovered 2 suitcases left behind a hedge in a field. So thinking that's a bit odd, like what are they? Probably hoping it was treasure because we all hope that it's going to be a suitcase full of money. He went and
Yes.
picked up the suitcases, opened them up, and unfortunately made a really grim discovery because the suitcases were full of human remains. A
Oh.
post-mortem test showed that the body was of a young male, and the young male had been sexually assaulted and strangled before his body was then dismembered. The only clothing in the suitcases was a jacket. The police believe that the male was murdered about 48 hours before he was discovered, and it seemed that the body had been professionally dismembered. It had been cut into 8 different pieces, and dismembering people isn't as easy as it sounds. It requires
No.
some pretty specific medical knowledge. You need the right instruments to do it. The cuts were very clean, and a consultant
That's what I was going to say.
surgeon, yeah, the consultant surgeon at the Ipswich and Suffolk Hospital, which was then called the Ipswich and Suffolk Hospital, said that the crime was most likely to have been committed by a doctor, a surgeon, or a medical student, because he said someone with knowledge of anatomy or with previous
Uh-huh.
experience of dismemberment, because, and this is a quote, the task had been expertly accomplished, with the exception of one joint, which was the left knee. So to dismember a
Okay.
body in this way, he said that you would have to have a very steady hand. The way that the body had been dismembered was very specific to somebody who would have had some sort of medical training. He said
Okay.
that one would expect the person dissecting the body, irrespective of how calm and deliberate it was, to show some
Mhm.
sign of nerves or anxiety or excitement during this. He
Right.
said that towards the end of the dissection, when they were coming to the end, he believes that the knee was left to nearly the end because he said that you would show signs of like this anxiety, or towards the end of the dissection, you would show some signs of excitement. This could be the reason for the bad workmanship on the left knee joint because everything else was very, very clean, or that the dismemberment was carried out by more than one person. And that one was very skilled, the other one possibly having a go or not as skilled was the one that did the left knee joint.
The left knee joint did not match
No, the
the
cutting
cuts
skills and the
made
cutting
for the
style of
rest.
the rest of the body. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
You said
there is
it was 8. You
8
said
pieces.
it was 8 pieces. So
Mm-hmm. Head
I'm just going
and
through.
then,
Oh, yeah. Okay.
yeah. So there is speculation that the knee was left to the end. And then maybe the nerves had finally started to catch up with whoever it was that was doing this. There was no murder weapon found with the remains.
Okay.
Okay. So police were unfortunately unable to determine the identity of the victim. There was no ID on the victim. There was no way that they could determine who it was. So they did something really, really unusual. And they actually released a photograph of the victim's head to the media. So a local funeral home was called in to stage the body as such. So they covered the neck of the body with scarves and made sure that the picture, it kind of just looks like somebody just looking. I sent the picture to you. It kind of just looks like a young man, eyes open, looking at the side. Now he's got very distinctive moles on one side of his face.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Bernard's brother, Chris Oliver, was reading a newspaper as he was getting a bus to Muswell Hill with a friend. Now, the friend saw the photograph of this boy in the paper, and there was a clipping in the newspaper of this boy, and just the head was showing. And so this Chris Oliver, his brother, said, a friend of mine said, that looks like your brother. And he showed him the picture and he couldn't believe it. And he said, how do you think that feels when you're reading a newspaper and you discover something like that
No.
your brother's body has been found in a suitcase? Obviously, Bernard's family then contacted the police after seeing the photograph, and they confirmed that unfortunately it was Bernard's body.
That's horrible.
That's really awful, isn't it? What a way to find out. That's just horrendous.
That is unbelievable. They couldn't just have someone draw a picture of him, or
I know, it's very unusual to release the actual picture. It's very, very unusual.
That
I
is
couldn't find another case where that's happened.
creepy.
It's cruel. But
I
to say
cannot-
that, the
Yeah.
actual picture doesn't look creepy. It doesn't look awful.
It doesn't. You sent
No,
it to me, and I looked at it,
yeah.
and I didn't think anything of it. And then you
It
tell
just-
me what it
yeah.
actually is.
Yeah. And I think I
Oh,
would be
wow.
safe to post it on our Instagram. And it's not an upsetting photo. It just looks like a picture of a boy from the side, a handsome boy from the side. Now, a major
Yeah.
murder investigation was then set up. Police inquiries were conducted in Suffolk and also in Muswell Hill. So together, the two constabularies worked together on this case. So the case then became widely known, and which is what you'll probably find it on the internet as the Tattingstone suitcase murder. That's what it's most widely known as. The police investigation was initially headed up by a man called Detective Superintendent Tom Tarling, and he was of the Suffolk Police. It was then taken over by Detective Superintendent Harry Tappin of the Metropolitan Police. Now, in Tattingstone, a witness said she saw a man who was middle-aged, wearing a dark trilby hat and a long trench coat, walking in the direction of Tattingstone on the Harwich Road, carrying a suitcase on the night that the suitcases were left. So within days, detectives had visited cottages in a village near to Tattingstone after reports that there were parties there involving seamen. The police were certain that he was strangled and sexually assaulted in Suffolk, and that the killer had then dismembered the body somewhere not far from Tattingstone before the remains were left. Now, Detective Superintendent Tapping confirmed that almost 1,000 people had come forward with information on this case. On the 23rd of January 1967, the remains of another teenage boy were found. Now, this teenage boy was between 10 and 18, and they were discovered at Waterhall on the Sussex Downs near Brighton. So just down a little bit, if you're looking on a map, just down a bit from Ipswich. The police suspected that the body may have been dismembered, and a Home Office pathologist was called in to examine the bones and the skull. And then these details were forwarded through to Detective Superintendent Tappin and his team. The body was actually later identified as that of Michael John Trower, who was 14, from Hove in Brighton. On the 12th of February 1967, no further evidence had come forward, so police then stepped their game up a little bit. They visited every single home in Tattingstone. They made similar inquiries in the neighbouring village of Bentley. Still nothing. Okay. This takes us to the next day, which is the 13th of February. Now, detectives began contacting every single laundry in Britain because in one of the cases was a hand towel, and the hand towel had a laundry mark QL42 inside one of the suitcases.
Okay.
So that was one of the only things that the police had got. There was nothing. We didn't know if it was a hand towel from a hotel. Was it a hand towel from a business? No idea. So far, police have been unable to determine the exact place the murder took place, but they do believe that the murder and dismemberment had taken place in the same place, and they possibly think Suffolk. Several pieces of physical evidence were recovered, obviously the suitcases, one of which was like if you think of old style suitcases, okay, the big square block ones, one was a sandy
Yeah.
colour, and they've got like the kind of little corners, they're like the leatherette corners. And this one
Yes.
had, it's a sandy colour suitcase, and then it had tan, I think it's best described as tan bits on the corners, and also a tan handle. And then it has those little locks, that you can flip to the side and they pop up, and then you can open up the suitcase. The second one was a kind of bluey grey colour, similar to the first one, but this one had dark brown covers and a dark brown handle. Again, there was locks to the front. One of the suitcases had the initials PVA, like the glue, PVA. The laundry mark QL42 was also on the hand towel. This is the only thing we've got other than a matchbox that was found in the pocket of Bernard's jacket, which was in the suitcase, obviously. And this was a brand of matches marketed in Israel.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So
okay.
not sure where these matches have come from, whether they were like this. Remember back in the old days, they used to hand out matches in clubs. Do you remember? You used to get like the little matchbooks. So I'm not sure if this is a matchbox, a proper box, or whether it's like a matchbook. I'm not actually quite sure because I haven't been able to see any pictures from it. So there were 2,045 statements taken in the first 4 months of the investigation. Nothing came up about this matchbox. Nothing came up about the towel. And nothing came up about the suitcases, about who they could belong to.
So I'm assuming that there was no local stores in the area that would carry anything like that type of those matches.
I'm assuming that they did
the police were able to
like
find
that, and contacted everybody locally. I mean, I'm sure that they did, but there's nothing of note of that yet.
Because like now you can go to like a little corner store, and especially if it's owned by foreign nationals or whatnot, you can find some very odd things in some of those corner stores. That normally you wouldn't find in your typical Costco or those type of stores, Walmart.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there was any sort of like local, like just corner shops that could have sold those, because it's very strange that they would end up in his pocket unless he happened to pick it up at a club or in a pub or something.
And I'm not even sure if he was a smoker or not. See, when I used to go out when I was like 18, 19, one of my friends always used to have a lighter with her. Always. She wasn't a smoker, but normally when you're in a club, people will say to you, "I haven't got a light, have you?" And so she would always just carry a lighter anyway. That was back in the day when you could smoke in clubs. But she would always carry a lighter purely for that reason. So I'm not sure whether he did smoke himself, whether he was given this matchbox because it was a promotional thing from a pub or a club, whether he picked it up, whether he was holding it for somebody else. There's no pictures that I could see of the matchbox. I did look, but there wasn't anything I could see to see whether it was a specific. It's from Israel, so I'm guessing it's not going to be something from a local area. So strange. Now, we had senior officers collating information and following up the leads that were coming in right up until 1968, but no one was ever brought to justice for the murder, and the case then started to go cold. The case was reopened in 1977, but although there were a few new things, which I'll get to in a minute, there was no sort of new evidence discovered. There were a couple of things that I look back and think that's a bit troubling. I'll come to that in a minute. In 2004... documents were released under the Freedom of Information Act, and these revealed that the police actually had two prime suspects for the murder. They were two medical doctors, Dr. Mark Reddington and Dr. John Biles. Now, Dr. Martin Bruce Reddington was born on the 26th of June, 1931. He had a surgery in Muswell Hill. The Muswell Hill premises were in the same direction of the street that Bernard Oliver was last seen walking down. In 1965, a warrant had been issued for Reddington's arrest on charges of buggery and indecent assault of males. However, before inquiries could be finished, he left the UK to live in South Africa. He did, however, come to and from the UK, but no evidence had been found placing him in the vicinity of the murder. When the case was reopened in 1977, a private investigator claimed to recognise the suitcase that had the initials PVA on them. She said that on it, on the suitcase, the PVA was written on the side, and she said it belonged to 3 men who used a laundrette in Muswell Hill. One of those 3 men was Martin Reddington. She claimed that she recognised the suitcase because when she used to do her laundry, this guy used to also come in and bring in his dirty washing in this same suitcase. So she told detectives that she spoke to the man in the laundrette on numerous occasions and vividly remembers the suitcase being brought in when he was doing his washing. So it was her description that, to an artist's impression, that the killer's picture was released. She also picked out a photograph of Dr. Reddington as one of those 3 men she recognised as owning the suitcase. But guess what? He was never interviewed in connection with this offence.
Even if he had nothing to do with it, you still interview him.
Well, you'd think, wouldn't you?
My question for this potential witness is, I'm assuming A, she knew about the suitcase and she knew about the PVA, right? Mm-hmm. Now, did she know about the police checking with local laundries about that wash towel?
I don't know.
That's interesting, right? Like if she's saying, hey, I remember him bringing in his wash to the laundry, and the investigation was kind of early on was centered around trying to locate the source
towel.
of this, the towel. So if she didn't know anything about the search of the laundries, and she said, hey, I know this guy from this laundry that we went to, that makes it much more interesting. If she knew about all this stuff, then you still look into it, but you kind of, is this something that she had read about and she just kind of wanted to be a part of the case?
Possibly. Well, yeah, there is that. Well, the police obviously didn't think there was sufficient evidence to bring him back and extradite him from Australia, because that was where he had been living at the time that she came forward with this. So in February 1977, Dr. Reddington was charged at the Central Court in Sydney, Australia, with committing an indecent assault on a male. So he's still doing things to males, even though he's living in Australia. Unfortunately, though, he died, age 63, in 1995. So if it was him, we're not going to know. So the second suspect was John Russell Biles. Now, he was born in 27th of January 1933. He was acquitted, along with another man, in November 1963 of assaulting a 16-year-old male at their flat in Earls Court. So the second suspect is also a doctor. Second suspect also has a past of assaulting young men. He also left the UK for Australia in the early 70s when the inquiries began into the sexual abuse of boys between 9 and 14 in Huddersfield. So all of a sudden, these inquiries are going on and this dude is off to Australia. On the 17th of December 1974, he was arrested in Sydney in relation to an alleged indecent assault on a boy. But whilst he was out on a $2,000 bail, he absconded. Unfortunately, his body was found in a room of the Prince of Wales Hotel in Queensland on the 19th of January 1975. Now, he left 2 suicide notes, one addressed to Scotland Yard and one addressed to Reddington, so to Dr. Reddington. The note to the police contained an apology for his actions, but made no direct reference to anything in particular. Both Martin Reddington and John Biles are also said to have been suspects in the murder of a boy in London in 1973, following an apparent homosexual relationship. Now, at this time, obviously, homosexuality was only legal between 2 consenting male adults aged 21 and above, of which this lad was not.
Yes.
So these 2 doctors, I'd like to see what their skills are like as doctors. Are they just GPs? Were they surgeons? What kind of medical training have they had? And was one very good and one a bit crap?
Oh. Interesting. Yeah.
So I'd be very interested to know exactly what their profession was and exactly what they did, what training they actually had. Had they had experience in surgical procedures, or were they just GPs that hadn't actually done that kind of thing?
That is very interesting.
Even more interesting, there were 2 further suspects in the case. Now, record producer and singer Joe Meek ran a recording studio at 304 Holloway Road in Islington in North London. Now, police intended to interview all of the homosexual men in London. This is a big feat the police have got themselves into. They want to speak to every single homosexual man in London.
Why just London? Why don't you do the whole country?
Well, yeah. Now, see, this would have included Joe Meek because he had a 1963 conviction for importuning for immoral purposes.
Okay.
In a public toilet.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, he did a George Michael. Right, so some accounts claim that he was afraid of being questioned, and it was rumoured that Bernard had worked as a tape stacker in Joe Meek's studio. But on the 3rd of February 1967, Joe Meek killed himself after murdering his landlady.
What?
So 3 out of the four suspects that we have are all dead.
That's okay. So let me say with Joe Meek. So he kind of goes against everything the police have said about what they were looking for, right?
Yeah.
They're looking for someone
he's a homosexual man. That's all.
Okay.
That's all they've got on him.
That's it.
Yeah, that's all they've got. They've got nothing else other than Bernard might have worked for him at some point. There's nothing. He's not a surgeon. He's not a doctor.
No. And they said that the person that did this had skill. Unless he's cutting up animals on his spare time, I don't see this guy as having the skill necessary to make precision cuts and
that's right.
A precision.
So I
dissection
personally
of a
don't
body.
think Joe Meek has got anything to do with this, really.
Mm-hmm.
So the final suspect was a very, very well-known person. The final suspect was Reggie Cray.
Reggie Cray.
So we know that Reggie Cray was a gangster from the East End of London.
Yes.
He was sentenced to life imprisonment along with his brother Ronnie in 1969 for the murders of George Cornell and Jack McVitie. Now, in September 2000, Reggie Cray wrote a book and he confessed to a previously unknown murder while being interviewed for the BBC documentary Reggie Cray, The Final Word. Now, a former cellmate of his, a guy called Pete, and I don't know if this is Gillett or Gillett, whatever, but this guy called Pete claimed that Reggie had also confessed the murder to him and that the victim was a young gay boy. It's been suggested that this is a reference to Bernard Oliver's murder, although the confession is actually widely believed to relate to the disappearance of Edward Smith, a guy that was called Mad Teddy. And the Cray brothers were sent to Suffolk as evacuees during World War II. They were in a house at Bilston, which is approximately 16 miles from Tattingstone.
Okay.
And that is how he has been linked. Again, I don't think that's a very credible lead.
I'm going to say no to Reggie Cray. I think that is more just...
Yeah.
That is trying to make...
sensationalism.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
You want to find an interesting story, right? You throw out someone that's going to get eyes on the story, right?
Yeah, of course.
Reggie Cray might have been. No, there's nothing to indicate that he has anything to do with this.
No. The thing is, the first two doctors, one, they're doctors, so they have got medical knowledge. Two, the lady in the laundrette picks the guy out with a photo and says that's him. So, I mean, those two, and both of them have killed themselves. Well, so those two to me are starting to look a little bit more like stronger candidates for this.
And what was the connection? Was there a connection between the two? I don't recall if you.
Yeah, they were friends.
Okay, so they were friends.
So the two doctors were friends, and then when the second guy killed himself, he which is John Biles, he left a suicide note for Dr. Reddington, the first guy. So they knew each other quite well.
Okay.
So 45 years gone.
No, I was going to say, out of the four people we talked about, those two are obviously the most interesting possibilities.
Yeah. Purely because of their skill, for a start. The fact that they're both doctors.
Yeah.
So I would say they would be stronger candidates. And one of them had a premises surgery just down the road from where he was last seen. They've both got previous for things against young boys. So,
and if you're going with the thought that there might have been two people, and one of them might not had the skill that the other one had, it'd be interesting to see if that's the case with these two.
Exactly. I mean, the police have just said that the cuts were very clinical, except for one, which made me think, what if it's two people? What if it isn't just one? What if two of them are involved in this? Well, 45 years after Bernard's murder, detectives were given a new lead in 2012 when a guy called Robert Thurston came forward. And you wouldn't think 45 years later you're going to get new leads. Somebody comes forward in this case, but he did. Robert was a local teenager at the time of Bernard's murder, and he described how one night, a week before Bernard's body was found, he and a friend were out and about around 1 to 2 a.m. They were pushing a scooter in Key Street by Ipswich Docks. Now, Robert described what happened next. This is what he says. As we came around the corner, we heard a bang. We walked around the corner and there were a pair of main gates and a courtyard where R.W. Paul offices were. We were right outside the gate and looked through the iron railings. We stopped and looked around to see who was there, and there were two suitcases which sat to the left-hand side of the archway. And we both thought, why would there be two suitcases standing there? A guy walked in from the right, his forearms towards his chest with his hands in the air, and he had pink gloves on. I recognised the gloves as it wasn't long after my appendix operation. He said the figure was really frightening. The guy had a really long, drawn face. He was well dressed with a long black Mac-type coat, dark trousers and polished shoes. We ran, bump-started the bike and fled. And he said, I can still see his face now. Robert said that when he first approached the police 10 years after Bernard's murder, he felt that he wasn't being taken seriously enough and didn't even make a statement at the time. He finally approached police at the end of 2011, and there was a newspaper article featuring Bernard's death, and he thought, no, this is the right thing to do. I am going to speak to them. And Suffolk Constabulary did actually confirm that they had made an appointment to see him.
Interesting.
It's very interesting. The two suitcases, the surgical gloves, the long coat. The lady remembers seeing a guy with suitcases and a long coat. So that kind of goes together. Now, Bernard's brother, Chris, the guy that found his brother's picture in the newspaper, spoke to the Eastern Anglian Daily Times on the 50th anniversary of Bernard's death in 2017. And he said, I quote, "It's just very tormenting knowing what happened to him. We were all boys, and at the time I was only 15. Bernard was a very gentle, friendly person. We used to do everything together. It's had a massive impact on us. You can't describe it. Even today, it still upsets me. I just feel like I want to burst out crying now. I've bottled up too much for years. There was no one ever brought to justice for this, and it's very frustrating." I also read another article in which he spoke to another newspaper, in which he said that his mum suffered greatly because of Bernard's death, because she felt so much guilt from leaving the household just before he went missing, and he was so upset that she had left, and she was really guilty right up until the end of her life. And Bernard's brother, Chris, said that his dad and the whole family didn't actually sit down and talk about what happened. There was no such thing as counselling services then, or any support from any authorities or anything like that. And he said basically the whole family just didn't talk about it. That's it. They just didn't talk about it. It sort of ripped their family apart.
That's really sad.
That's really sad, isn't it? It's really, really sad.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking 55 years later now.
I have this thought. I have a hard time believing that that a crime like this would have been a one-off situation. I can't imagine someone going and strangling someone first time and saying, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just take them apart piece by piece, right? So it's like, and then to never have done it before, and then to never do it again. Well, so I'd be curious to see if that we know of, like what other cases are out there that are unsolved that involve young males. around that same time,
Mm.
homosexual or not, right?
That's right. It would be very interesting to see. It would be very interesting to see if there is anything like that. I know that there was the torso in the Thames, which is a really famous case in England, and that is one of the longest running unsolved cases. But yeah, that just made me think about that, unidentified body parts being found, and obviously that's London, so, but no, it's not that, so it's very strange. I mean, if we could review this case now with the modern technology that we've got, such as the mitochondrial DNA, the touch DNA, we could find out a lot more about the murderer. I don't know what evidence there is left. I don't know how the suitcases were preserved. Were they preserved properly?
Yeah.
Were they not? The suitcases themselves could have a lot of information if we use nowadays technology on stuff like that, like the handles, the locks. I'm not sure what the police procedural, what they were like back then. Did they wear gloves when they were handling it? I think in a few of the pictures that I've seen online of them working on it, it doesn't look. No, they're using their own hands. I'll send you a picture, and I will actually put this on our Instagram page. There's a picture.
You can't do anything with it.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's the thing. Let's just see if I can just put a. Let's just get rid of that a second, and I can put that in and show you. You've got pictures of the police with their hands all over these things. I mean, how many of them had handled it? Probably quite a lot, I would imagine. Right. And unfortunately, that's it, isn't it? There goes your DNA. But back then, I suppose they weren't really thinking about DNA tracing and stuff like that because they didn't know anything about it. So, there's a picture of the police that was in the newspaper and that we subsequently had around. And there we are. No gloves. Yeah. No gloves whatsoever.
Nope.
Unfortunately.
Let me open it for you.
Yeah, I like let me just show you.
They put the suitcases on top of looks like plastic sheeting.
Yeah.
You see that?
Yeah.
But then here you go, the detective or whatever, just touching it, like, here you go.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, the handles, the locks, the hinges, all places where you could get decent fingerprints, possibly. Good places to investigate. The laundry mark of the towel inside the two suitcases, what was the towel made of? Where was it from? Was it a hotel towel? What colour was it? What did it look like? Why aren't there any pictures of it that people might look at this online and go, oh, wow, that's from so-and-so, but nothing. The matchbox found in his pocket. The brand, we don't know what brand it is. We know that it was marketed in Israel. Did he smoke? If he did, what was his brand that he smoked? Did he use matches? Did he use a lighter? Where were those matchboxes found? Were they handed out? Were they not? The other thing that I thought about was Bernard's clothes. Looking at Bernard's clothes, the only item of clothing found in those suitcases was his jacket. So what else was he wearing that night? Does anybody else remember seeing him? What happened to his clothes? Did somebody's wife find bloody jeans or a bloody t-shirt with no explanation as to what it was? Would it be that somebody's wife was doing the washing and the husband said, oh no, I was in surgery today and that got splashed up on me? Could it be that? We need to see if the blood staining, because I'm sure there would be blood staining on Bernard's jacket. Would that blood staining be of just Bernard? Are there any other blood stains on it? Is there any other DNA on it? We've got fingerprinting, hair analysis, dirt samples. There's so much that we can do nowadays that could help in this case. All kind of hedging on the fact that these police actually kept the evidence in a decent state to now. Yeah.
Like something as simple as, did they take fingernail clippings? Right?
That's right.
Who knows?
That's right. Well, we don't have any. We don't have anything to say about any defensive wounds. There's nothing to say he had defensive wounds. Is there any toxicology? Because a post-mortem was carried out, and because he was said to have been strangled. So, what was he strangled with? What was it that strangled him? Was it rope? Was it material? What was he strangled with? We know that he was sexually assaulted. So, would that be that there are traces of semen, or would it be that it's just injury, and that's the reason that we know he's been sexually assaulted?
Right.
So could that have been with an object, or would that be penetrated by person? There's so many questions and so much stuff that we need to know to be able to, and I know that you have to keep stuff back and we talk about it all the time, but there are certain things that you could let out in this case that would jog somebody's memory. I mean, these people, if they
Right.
were the same age as Bernard and his brother now, would be in their like 60s, early 70s maybe. So there's a high chance that people that were out that night are still alive and time is ticking,
Right.
you know?
So strange. These cases are frustrating.
I think this is totally solvable. There's so much
It
information.
is, but I think it also has to be, it's solvable based off of how well police kept evidence, right?
Yeah.
And what evidence they kept.
But surely, unless they've got rid of absolutely everything in this case, surely there must be some kind of technology nowadays we can use on that stuff. There's got to be something. You're not telling me everything's going to fail. There's no DNA, there's no hair, there's no dirt sampling, there's no fingerprint stuff. There's nothing in the post-mortem that we can look at now and go, right, okay, well, what about this? Like your fingernails, that kind of stuff. Surely there's got to be something in here that you can release to the public where they would look at it and go, bam, I saw that guy that night. I know where that towel's come from. I was a cigarette saleswoman in a nightclub in London. I remember those cigarettes. We got them from here because they were cheaper to buy in. You know, there's got to be. There has to be something.
There are experts on everything out on the internet,
yes.
Right? I'm sure there are people that you'd be like, hey, do you recognize this box of matches or matchbook, whatever it is? And there's someone out there that will know exactly what it is, where it's from, who sold them.
Yeah. And that's the frustrating thing in this case, is that I feel that this, with just a little bit of information leaked to the public or put out in the public by the police, I think that this can be solved. And I think that I feel for Colin, you know, Colin's still fighting for his brother's killer to be, I mean, even if it's one of those two doctors, even they're both dead, even if it's one of the two of them and it's proved that whatever it is that they find, one of the doctors was on holiday in Israel or something like that, and one of the nurses that worked in his surgery remembers him bringing back these matches or bringing back these cigarettes from holiday, or remembers him going on holiday, at least it brings us one step closer to pinpointing who could have done it to him. We're never going to know why unless there's a confession written somewhere, but at least it would give his brother and his remaining siblings kind of like a gotcha moment.
Some sort of closure. Yeah. Some sort of closure. A little victory, whatever you want to call it.
Exactly. Like a little win kind of thing. So even to this day now, 55 years later, there's no solution to this. We're still not any closer at the moment to finding out who killed Bernard Oliver. But there are unsolved case reviews going on within Norfolk Police. Mr. Andy Guy, who's the Major Crime Review and Unsolved Case Manager, is the guy that's looking at this case. His email address we have. So if you're listening to this podcast on a train somewhere or going somewhere and you've got a nan or a mum who grew up in that area that might know something about this, might remember this case, might have gone out drinking with their friends at this time. We're talking like 1967. So are any of your family still alive from that area? Could they know about matchboxes back that time that were handed out, that were foreign? You know, do they know anything about clubs in that area? Do they remember this case? Ask them, see. And if there's anything that comes up, get in touch with Andy Guy, the Major Crime Review team manager. Just put forward anything you can, because just like the case of the boy in the box, this can be solved all this many years later. And we can help Chris and the rest of his family to have some kind of answer to what happened to his brother.
Yeah.
Again, another one I'd never heard of, but one that is frustrating because I feel that we could do more with this.
I feel like they had it. They had it solved, and they just didn't have that last piece of evidence that they needed. I think either the two doctors together kind of were involved, or at least one of them. I just have that sense, and they were just waiting for that break.
Eureka
and they never
moment.
got it.
Yeah. The two doctors, pressure was on them from however many angles because both of them died. So, one of them committed suicide. I don't think the other one committed suicide, but one of them committed suicide. I mean, what was the reason? Why are you writing? Why are you writing to the Metropolitan Police apologising for things? If you've not done anything wrong. Unfortunately, both of them were up to no good. Quite obviously, a few times because both of them had been in trouble previously with the police. Unfortunately, I don't actually know how Dr. Reddington died. I just know that he died in 1995, age 63. So I don't actually know how he died. But the other guy, John Biles, he committed suicide and left suicide notes. But strange that one of them was to Dr. Reddington. I wonder what that said.
And you said something that really kind of piqued my interest. Like, I would like to know if either of these doctors had made any trips to Israel.
Yeah. Interesting, wouldn't it be?
Yeah, it'd be very interesting. Well, thank you very much for that.
No problem. If there's anything that you think you could help with this case or family members that you could talk to about this case, let us know. We'd love to know if there's any updates that we could forward on to the police or forward them on yourself. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to talk to them, I'll happily do it for you. No problem.
Yeah.
All right. So at this point of our show, we like to lighten the mood slightly. And we like to invite the captain in for our dumb criminal segment.
Well, this guy is a dummy.
Okay.
So I love it when fugitives do absolutely ridiculous or dumb things that end up getting them caught. All right.
Okay.
But this guy might actually take the case. Okay. All right, Cherry. So a 40-year-old man from Georgia named Christopher Spaulding apparently was scrolling through Rockdale County Sheriff's November Most Wanted list on Facebook.
As you do.
And became livid. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And became livid when he couldn't spot his own name. Okay?
How dare you not have me on there?
So he decided to take matters into his own hands. And he, in using his own personal Facebook account, commented, "How about me?"
Oh, no.
Now, the following day, the sheriff department replied to his comment, stating, "You are correct. You have 2 warrants. We are on the way." So later on, police shared a screenshot with the conversation along with a mugshot of Spaulding's arrest photo with a caption, "We appreciate you for your assistance in your capture."
In your own capture, you loser.
Yeah, so he'd had 2 outstanding arrest warrants for felony probation violations. So he wasn't on the most wanted list. He was upset. He commented, and they made sure to, go out and arrest him so they can feel a little better. Yeah,
but he's still not on the most wanted list because they've got him. So he's just ruined it even more.
What's ridiculous is, so while the most wanted list doesn't really exclude any particular criminals, what he was wanted for wasn't really what they were going after. So they were their top 10 list are rapists, murderers, things like that. Yeah. So the guy could have just shut his mouth and he could have just got away with it. Yeah. Well, got away with it for a little bit longer. How about that?
Yeah. Well, they might not have apprehended him. He might have got away with it completely if he hadn't told them where he was, and upset that I'm not on your most wanted list. Come on. He must be sitting in jail kicking himself in jail after that. He's got to have been.
Could you imagine getting that notification that someone responded to your comment and it's the sheriff saying, "Yeah, hey, we're on our way," and just like absolutely just shitting yourself. Like, oh my God, what did I do? Or did he? Did he really even realize?
Did he even realize that they were actually on their way? Did he just think, "Oh yeah, whatever," and then they've just turned up and he's like, "Oh no." They
really do have warrants?
Yeah. Can you imagine? I wonder what they were for. Did it tell you what they were for, his warrants?
No, it doesn't.
They're like petty, like lifting chewing gum from a store or something.
Yeah, so it sounds like he whatever it was for, he just had he was just on probation, so he had got probation for it,
like misdemeanors.
But I guess
then.
so he probably wasn't following his probation, whatever was requirement for the probation.
Yeah.
And so he had two arrest warrants out for it. So, yeah, there you go.
Silly man. That's hilarious. Shut up. Don't. Why do people do this? Do you remember the one we did with the guy on Facebook where he tried to get them to upload a better picture for his
Oh yeah,
his wanted poster. I was like, please don't use that picture. I don't look very nice. Can you use this one, please? Okay. And now we're going to find you from your Facebook location, you idiot. What's
unbelievable.
wrong with people? So, brilliant. Well, thank you for joining us this week. You can, of course, find us on all our social medias. We are occasionally on Facebook, but most often we are in Instagram or Twitter. So feel free to come and contact us there. You can also see us if you really, really want to. If you want to come to CrimeCon UK, tickets are now on sale for next June. So you can get your tickets when you get to the payment section at the end. Just put in the code CRIMEpedia and we will give you 10% off of your ticket price. There's some really cool stuff going on. Head over to crimecon.co.uk, go over and see what's going on there because there are some brilliant stuff headed for June in London. New venue, some great new speakers, some brilliant new stuff going on there as well that you won't have seen if you've been to CrimeCon before. So you can definitely go and sign up for that because it's going to be brilliant. And next week will be our Christmas show. Yes, it will,
yes,
will it?
Will.
It'll be our Christmas show next week. We've got a very exciting episode for you next week. And then we'll give you updates on what's going on over the Christmas period as well. So for now, be nice.
And bye.